This week on Just Solutions, we pass the baton to a new host. Gloria Neal joins Free Speech TV as a guest host of Just Solutions, the Culture series. Gloria's professional experiences as a black woman in broadcasting and government will guide us through informative and inspiring topics that are impacting the working class and BIPOC communities. From Free Speech TV, Just Solutions. Welcome to a very special edition of Just Solutions, where I'm passing the baton to a new host as we head into a new year. We are absolutely delighted to welcome to Free Speech TV Gloria Neal, who will be bringing Just Solutions into a new era. Gloria, it's so great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us today and going forward as well.
Oh, you are so welcome. You know, I could just listen to you talk all day long. I love that accent.
Well, I am going to be taking a step back and really focusing on you today and introducing our viewers and listeners to you. Many will be familiar, Gloria, because you have a long background in journalism, in digital media, in broadcast journalism, as well as many other roles that you have played. So as we welcome you to Free Speech TV, why don't you introduce yourself and take us through exactly your particular experience, not just in broadcast journalism, but also in politics as well, because you're going to bring such a unique perspective to this show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. From radio to TV to print, you name it here, not just in this Denver market, but also in Atlanta, Georgia, which has taken me all across the country. You talk about speaking engagements. I've done it from individual organizations to bigger organizations like the United Way. All of those things make a huge difference when you want to get a good rounded picture of not just your community, but society as a whole. So this city certainly has grown immensely, but so has every other city. And just like every other city, we've got a lot of challenges here. And what happens in one state in this country really has ramifications across the board. So between those mediums, I said radio, TV, and print, really, in essence, I started out in radio and I loved it because it afforded me anonymity. People don't know you unless they recognize your voice, right? And so from there, I went to TV. It was a 2-week gig that was supposed to last just the duration of the Democratic National Convention. And it lasted almost 10 years. And so I went from Denver to Atlanta, Georgia, news anchor down there, and certainly continue to write, columns and all of the different editorials that come into play. But I will tell you, the journey has been phenomenal because you don't pick your talent or your parents, I always say, but what you do pick, I think when you are passionate about something, it really does resonate and it comes through. And so with everything that is going on today from politics, coming off being the director of public affairs for the mayor of Denver, it really has introduced me to a whole new world of not only how things work, but how things don't work and why they don't work. So it has been a refreshing journey. And this particular opportunity, Just Solutions, it would be so great to tune in and just get that, Just Solutions. But to pose the questions that have been posed and understanding the issues that happen not only on the state level, but even on the federal level, and then how that impacts folks living from neighborhood to neighborhood and what that really means. So it's so much bigger than just voting. It's so much bigger than just volunteering your time. I think democracy, real democracy, requires all of us to be plugged in. Another issue that has really caught my attention in the last, say, 2 years has really been social justice. And, when you look at just from healthcare to environment to governance, all the things that we have to deal with, ESG or environmental, social, and governance is a very, very big deal. So as I branch off into this next realm of really trying to help, I was just at an event, and I cannot recall her name, but she's the former president of Ireland. And she was explaining why she does not call climate crisis climate crisis. She says we are beyond that. It is climate critical. We don't have a choice but to act. And even when we act, because we've taken too long, it's not going to be enough soon enough. And so, yeah, it's political implications have a way of spilling over into everything at your kitchen table. And for me, that is absolutely where Just Solutions will be in 2023.
Well, I believe that was Mary Robinson, who was the first female president of Ireland, a huge hero of mine, and has
That was her.
gone on in the global stage to talk about human rights and also what's happening in the environment and making the connection between the two, which really ties into what you were just saying there, Gloria. And, you know, so when I think back about the previous shows that we've done on Just Solutions, there's such a common thread that emerges when we talk about everything from healthcare to the economy to the environment. It's structural racism and how communities of color still bear the brunt of all of the problems in all of these issues.
No question.
So you are a Black woman who has come up through an industry that has not been welcoming historically, and we'll talk about what's happening now, hopefully.
Oh, no question.
Right. What has been your experience? What has been your lived experience coming up through the media in terms of either representation in front of the camera, on the microphone, but also the power systems? Who is in charge of the media, and then who's making the decisions about what stories are being told?
Well, and who's also making the decisions about what they say is beautiful or what is wanted to be seen on the other side of what I call that big box. Those are old white men, and sometimes they're middle-aged white men. And you're absolutely right. Their definition of beauty is not what me or you in many instances know, right? Certainly not for me. And so you have to have a very made up mind. Whenever I mentor, and I mentor several individuals in the National Association of Black Journalists, which is the largest organization of journalists of color in this country. And when I talk to them about their contract, or I ask them why they want to get in this business, most of them will say either money, or they'll say, you know, because I look good, or because it is something that, you know, they've always aspired to be. And I always tell them the first thing they need is to know your craft. I don't care how good you look. Somebody will always look better. And you only look good for a certain matter of time. Now, as we've seen, older white men can look like older white men on TV. Usually women of color, especially women of color, you have to look good. You have to know your craft. That means knowing how to write, knowing how to edit. Typically, if they would tell me, Gloria, you don't need to know that. You're not that you don't need to. I would come early or stay late to get it, because I believe if it's there, learn it. It's very hard to do in a union shop, depending on where you live, because a lot of times in union shops, you can't touch the equipment. But most of the country is non-union. So I would just use my tools. But as you relate to racial equity in TV or the lack thereof, my experience has been like most, and I have been more vocal about that than most, which is why I think to grow your own, whether it is Just Solutions on Free Speech TV or it is another form of talk show, I think it's very important to be able to speak truth to power and also understand that you just can't say everything that you think. You really do have to be strategic. So it's been no easy road, because you're right, the representation is not there, but it's not so much as the representation is not only not in front of the camera, not as much as it should be all across the country. The representation is not there behind the camera, in the producers, in the general managers, in the owners. All of those things make a huge difference. So, honey, I could do a show on that alone, several shows as a matter of fact. But my experience has been you better have a tough skin, and you better be able to carry your weight and know your craft, because when you do speak truth to what they perceive as power, be ready to exit, or at least have life be very tough. And again, I'm not saying quit your job or don't get into this business. I'm saying come in with your eyes open, because I think when you do that, you are in a better position to not only hold the day, but be a leader and also understand what you do bring to the table.
You know, what you were just saying there about being held to certain beauty ideals and
Mhm.
standards when you are a woman in the media, and particularly a woman of color. It reminds me of, you know, the documentary that Free Speech TV is broadcasting about Black women's hair and how the political nature of that, because women are held to different beauty standards, and particularly women of color. And this ties in very much to political decisions being made. We're seeing the Crown Act. Of
Right.
course, here in Colorado, Representative Leslie Herod really spearheaded that at a Colorado level. Many other states are doing that to really acknowledge that how Black women have been targeted with a different standard,
No
and
question.
their hair plays out on that. Talk a little bit about that, because I'm seeing more and more of that. There are a lot of mainstream documentaries now coming up. I'm seeing this trickle up. Of course, this has been an issue that's been going on for years, but it does seem to at least be penetrating some of the national consciousness right now.
Well, you know what's so interesting? You are absolutely right. And I know Representative Herod very well. When Colorado passed that, more and more people were saying, what? The Crown Act? What is that about? Why are we even having to go there? And whoever was saying that usually was a white male, female. You should have seen, just swoop in on them and say, here's what we've been going through and still going through. I can remember being in Atlanta and individuals saying, oh my gosh, your hair is so short. And I'm thinking, whoa, y'all knew my hair was short when you hired me. I didn't apply for this job. You came to Colorado to get me for this job. It's not like I'm going to buy a weave. I'm not anti weave, but I'm definitely pro glow. I like what I bring to the table and I know who I am, right? So I am not interested. I always said, if I am on TV with a wig, that means it must be wig week at the TV station, or something is going on costume wise. But I think it's important to be strong and independent in yourself. If they are saying, you know what, can't wear your hair long, and I've mentored many a Black woman in smaller markets who've said, Glow, my news director, who's a woman, just told me that if I get braids, I'm not going to be on as long, or the hate mail is going to come, or, I'm going to damage my career. And I always say to them, what do you want to do? And they will say, well, I want to wear the braids. And I said, okay, the pluses and the not pluses, because I don't necessarily think there are minuses. But if you got your big girl pants on, deal with what's going to come your way. You might not get on as much as you want to get on. You might not be able to fill in the anchor spot, but you also may garner a lot of individuals who say, hey, she looks like me. I would really love to be her. Oh my gosh, you see it, you can be it. There's so much that goes into that. So, yeah, there's a lot. My experience has been very similar because my response has been just what I said. You knew I had short hair, natural hair when you hired me. That's not changing. And if it comes down to I've got to choose, I choose me. When you do that and you have a very matter of fact approach, there is a level of respect. They may not like you, and that's okay. But there is a level of respect that says, she's not the one. I've also known women who say, you know what, you got to fire me. And they have. I've seen women in Atlanta, Georgia. You think, well, bigger markets where there are a lot of Black people, certainly this isn't an issue. Think again, because you have old white men making a lot of the decisions on what's determined to be beautiful. Will you get hate mail? Absolutely, as a general manager or a news director. But those individuals need to have their big boy or girl pants on and deal with that. A good news director, in my opinion, doesn't even tell their talent about mail like that. You should absolutely expect it in this day and age. And if you don't have the intestinal fortitude to deal with that, maybe you shouldn't be in management, because your talent should never know about that. Not really. You're going to have people out there who hate based on the history of this country. If you were not prepared, at the very least, you were naive as a manager.
We would love to hear from our viewers about your thoughts on the show as we are passing the baton to our new host, Gloria Neal, who will be taking just solutions going forward here on Free Speech TV. As we always do, we invite you to join the conversation. Drop us a comment under the video. Join us on social media so your voice can also be heard. Well, Gloria, the name of the show is just solutions, and we always try to have a focus on what are some of the, especially the grassroots solutions that are trickling up and really being transformative. And, as we're talking about the need for representation, diversity, inclusion, all of these issues, where do we need to go? What are the real needs to have these stories told? I mean, when we're seeing such a time of division right now in politics, and there's a very much a narrative of othering people and
Sure,
pitting different groups around each other,
sure.
against each other. Tell us your thoughts on the need to have these stories told as part of our effort to find a solution. When we have these stories told, what is the impact, especially
Right.
people of color, working class, all of these issues? There's so much commonality across many different communities, but when we're not having their stories told, we fail to see those commonalities.
That's
What do you?
correct. And not only do we fail to see that, but we also fail to see the importance of why it's not just important for me, a Black woman, to be on TV telling stories about the Black community. It's also important to have white people, white women, white men on telling the stories. If you look around a newsroom, and I've even said this to some of the local directors, I've said, hey, don't come to me and say, we can't find any Black people, or the Black people come and then they leave. Well, one, are you including them when you hire them? And two, are you just giving them just enough money? When you want to hire Black people, when you are underrepresented in a group, you do everything you can to attract that talent to the market. And when they get here, you do everything you can to keep them, because your biggest asset is human power. When you train somebody and go through all of that time and then they leave on the first thing smoking because they don't feel included, that's a problem. Smart management knows, you know what? We need representation from all groups, not just Black folks, but you talk about LGBTQ plus, you talk about individuals who are handicapped or challenged physically, you talk about individuals who want to be productive in society. There is a place for you at the table in the 21st century. And if there isn't, there should be. That's what I tell them. So my journey into environmental, social, and governance and diversity, equity, and inclusion deals with just this. I was recently, and I was telling you about the former president of Ireland, Mary. She was phenomenal. And she was saying, you know what, I'm old, so I can say whatever the hell I want. And I don't really care who likes it. And she had, excuse me, she had me after that. I say all that because if we don't get to a point where we can talk about it, get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, right? To be able to talk about race and how it has shaped this country, and how there's still a lot of issues like redlining, even though the laws were written to make sure that discrimination was the rule of the day. People say, oh my gosh, that's over. That was back in the 40s and 50s, but those laws are still on the books. There is so much that we need to tackle that I always tell individuals when I speak in front of groups that baby steps. In order to make it stick, in order to make it work, we're going to have to take baby steps together. The conversation is going to need to be had together. A good friend of mine, Regina Jackson, is doing a thing called Race to Dinner. And out of that Race to Dinner, it happened during the George Floyd murder. She really attracted an individual out of Los Angeles, a director who has come, and over the last year, they put together a movie. And Race to Dinner was basically, you invite a group of white women to, and she did this, to her house. And they sat down and they talked about race. The only thing was, you couldn't be quiet and you couldn't, cry. And you say, well, why is that important? Well, typically in the workplace, usually when white women cry, Black women are usually seen as the aggressor. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have feelings, but I'm not crying at work. I always say if I cry at work, it's a bad day for everybody. I'm not going to cry. I'm going to use what I'm feeling and talk to you like a human being. And so the manipulation that is associated when usually that white boss comes and says, hey, Jenny is crying, you should go home. And that's happened not only to me, but to thousands, if not millions of Black women in the workplace. You're too aggressive. You're too this. You're too that. You can't, people are intimidated. All of those things that society will try to make our problems, our being Black women, as opposed to, excuse me, I'm minding my own business. This is what happened. She said something, I said something. And next thing I knew, she ran and got you. So there is a lot that needs to be worked through, and that's just one scenario. When you look at people of color in the workplace, I always say our blues are different from everyone else's. No one else brings what Black folks bring into the workplace. How does that manifest itself? Where does that show up? And do we feel like we're getting a fair shake? And more times than not, the answer is no, but you know you must keep going forward. So there is a lot to unpack with that question, but I think the more we talk about it and move forward as a society together, the better we are. Last point I'll make. I had an individual say, Glo, what's this thing about white privilege? White privilege? What is that? I work hard. I'm a white man. I'm in Nebraska. I work hard. I deserve to have what I have. I've worked for it. And he said, so can you explain it to me? And I said, well, here's what I will say. I will say, let's just say that the system, white privilege as you call it, is a stream of water. And you jump in that stream. You are swimming with the current. Doesn't mean you're not working hard. But the stream, the system is designed to help you because you're swimming with the current, right? You are doing everything you need to do to get to that next point. Take a Black person. They jump in that same water. They got to swim against that current because the system is not broken. It was designed to not help Black folks, right? If you look at the history and you know the history of this country, and so that person jumps in the water and they're swimming twice as hard to get half the distance. All of that rings true because the playing field is different. We're all equal. No, we're not. It's not about equality. It is about equity. Where you start from as a white person is different than where I start from as a Black person. If Black people couldn't own land and white people today pass their land down to their grandkids, great grandkids, and so forth and so on, now I'm in school with those great grandkids and they say, oh, I don't have any student loans because we paid all that off. You are always starting from behind because you don't have any inherited wealth. Every generation is having to earn their own wealth. Like I say, there's a lot to talk about in that vein, but it is not a me or you. It is not a zero-sum game. We cannot afford to leave these many people behind and have them feel as though they are not being heard or not being treated fairly and be a society of the 21st century. It is just not possible or plausible. And so, yes, that is one of the topics we'll be talking about on Just Solutions.
Well, I'm so excited because you're going to bring such an incredible perspective to all of these conversations. So in the last few minutes that we have, Gloria, I mean, you touched on some of it there, the very deep systemic nature of so many of these issues, that it's by design, not by default, that people have been excluded and continue to be excluded. So as we're passing the baton to you and to your very, very capable hands for Just Solutions. You mentioned there that'll be some of the conversations. What else do you hope to bring to this show? And what can viewers and listeners expect?
Oh, Maeve, there is so much, whether it is happening here in the States or around the world. There's no such thing as, well, you know, it's only happening in one part of the world. It is eventually going to be happening if all we have to do is look at COVID. Right? We know that the ability to jump on a plane, things spread, but not just viruses. When you look at global economics, when you look at the climate, what happens in other parts of the world, in the middle of the ocean, oh, honey, it's coming, right? All of those things have an impact on every single world or every single one of our worlds individually today. And I think those are some of the things that people do not want to hear about. They think, well, you know what? We're here in this part of the country. We don't have any water problems. And I say, yeah, don't put a period, put a comma, because it should say, not yet, you don't. but you will eventually if you don't learn how to conserve what we have. All resources are not infinite. We cannot keep going the way we've gone. The world, the globe, this big blue marble, it is speaking to us saying, y'all might want to pay attention because y'all did see what happened with not only the dinosaurs, but even with the Romans. You look at what happens when you don't take care of what you have. So there is a lot. We will be talking about it. If you are concerned about it, we will be talking about it on Just Solutions, and not only talking, but I will also want to hear from you. But before we do that, Maeve, I just want to say I watched several of your shows, and I've watched Free Speech TV for years. There's so many choices to choose from. Thank you. You have done a phenomenal job in not only tackling tough issues that are happening across the globe, but also bringing it home and helping us better understand that. So as you pass the baton to me, I hope I do just as half as much as you've done, because you've been wonderful. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Gloria. It's a real honor to have you take over the show and bring it to new heights and put your stamp on it and create something that hasn't been created before. And as we have been discussing, there is such a need to have these stories and to also have those solutions highlighted in the last minute that we have. And I just want to let folks know, of course, they're going to hear so much more from Gloria Neal in future Just Solutions episodes. But are you optimistic? Because this is a time, we're also heading into a new year, we're heading into a new Congress. And as I said, the name of the show is Just Solutions. And we do try to highlight how much positive solutions are coming from the grassroots and give them a platform. Are you feeling optimistic as we're heading in, as I said, to a new year, a new Congress, all of that newness coming our way?
Well, you know what? My default is I'm a glass half full chick. Right? I'm a glass half full. We're looking at everything. I always say, even when I'm having a bad day, somebody else would love to have these problems, but they're in the morgue. I always think about that. So complain, but complain within limits, and understand that if we are alive, we still have an opportunity to change it. So yeah, I'm optimistic, but I'm also cautious, because we're only going to be as effective as we are in leading. I say this time in our history, we have a lot of leaderless leaders. You have to make the tough choices. And I've also said this, I believe it will be women, many of them at that table saying, you know what? We are tired of this. We are tired. And so we must take a stand and change this, because if we don't, there will be nothing left for our grandkids or their kids. So yeah, I'm optimistic, but I also know it's a heavy lift.
Well, we very much look forward to having Gloria Neal here at Free Speech TV. And I look forward to being able to experience Just Solutions as a viewer and a listener, so I can really get to know all of these voices that you're going to be bringing forward. Gloria Neal, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Maeve. I appreciate it. Good luck to you.
And it has been my honor to be able to host the Just Solutions show thus far on Free Speech TV. And it's always such an honor and a privilege to be with you, our viewers, our listeners, all of you who make all of this possible. And I am so thrilled to be passing that baton on to Gloria Neal. And the show will be very much going forward to from strength to strengthen her capable hands. But don't forget, you can catch Just Solutions as a podcast and watch past episodes at our website, freespeech.org. But stay tuned for lots more to come with Gloria Neal at the helm on Just Solutions.